This brings me to our second signature event on February 16, which is a debate on cooperation between the UN and sub-regional organizations. And in our case, this is Collective Security Treaty Organization in maintaining international peace and security. We believe it is important to inform our colleagues on the activities of the CSTO and on the recent collective efforts of the organization to stabilize the situation in Kazakhstan and in Central Asia in general, and to hear briefings from CSTO Secretary General Stanislav Zась. And I can inform you that Secretary General Guterres expressed his willingness to brief the Council on that agenda item as well. February 17 will mark exactly 7 years since the adoption of Security Council Resolution 2202, endorsing the package of measures for the implementation of the Minsk agreements on Ukraine. Unfortunately, despite statements by Ukrainian authorities that they adhere to the settlement, basically not a single move was made by Kyiv to meet obligations under the Minsk agreements. So we most probably will discuss not implementation, but rather non-implementation of Minsk agreements. But we think that this matter should be brought to the attention of the international community. February 18, we will hold briefing and consultations on Haiti. SRSG Helen Lalime will present Secretary General's report. February 22nd, morning session, we will hold a briefing on the work of the United Nations multi-dimensional integrated stabilization mission in the Central African Republic with SRSG Mankur as a briefer. We also expect briefers from the African Union and International Conference on Great Lakes region, who will speak on their role in promoting ceasefire initiative in the Central African Republic. In the afternoon session, we will have a standalone briefing on Iraq, and more precisely on the Iraqi-Kuwaiti Compensation Commission. We hope that by that time, this mechanism will finalize all technical formalities in Geneva, and the Security Council will be able to approve the completion of the work of the UNCC. February 23rd, we will gather to discuss Middle East. Special Coordinator Tor Venesland will brief us on the situation in the region, of course with a focus on the situation in Palestine. Regular briefing on Iraq with SRSG Janine Hennis Plaschert is scheduled for the morning of February 24th. Later in the afternoon, the Security Council will listen to the 7151 committee briefing, as well as will hold consultation on 1718 committee. On the next day, we will first adopt 2 resolutions on the 1540 committee and 2140 committee. Then we have scheduled the combined discussion on both Syria political and humanitarian in briefing and consultations, and perhaps chemical as well. We expect Geir Pedersen and Martin Griffiths and somebody perhaps on chemical to brief the Council. As for the informal wrap-up, we are thinking, of course, of 28th of February, as this is the last day of the month. We will confirm the date at a later stage. I think I've been exhaustive and you have no further questions.
Okay, first question goes to Anka.
Thank you, Ambassador, and we wish you the best of luck on behalf of Anka for the busy month ahead. My question is on Ukraine. Yes, surprise. Can you elaborate on what President Putin just said about the US and NATO that have ignored Russian concerns? And also, if Ukraine decides to implement the Minsk agreement, do you think this could be a first step towards a de-escalation of the situation in the area? Thank you.
I think it is wrong to link our proposals on security guarantees and the security architecture that we made to US and NATO and that we discussed with them already, both with the US, NATO, and also we had a discussion in the OSCE, with the situation in Ukraine as it is being presented by some of our Western partners. These are issues that are not, European security is not boiled down to the situation in Ukraine. It's a broader issue, and we see attempts to link these two things and to present it in a way as if this is a price that we are asking for the European security. These are standalone issues. Of course, Ukraine is part of Europe and part of the European security, but these things are not absolutely linked. You know that we have presented our proposals, even draft agreements to US and NATO on what we would like to see as security guarantees for Russia, and we based it on decisions that were adopted by all members of the OSCE, both in 1999 in Istanbul and 2010 in Astana. Yes, there are clauses there that provide for any country to choose their ways to ensure their security and to choose their allies. But there is a related clause, which is that security is indivisible, and the security of one country can be ensured at the expense of the other. And that is what our Western colleagues, in particular in NATO, have been ignoring for all these years. And finally, we raised that question straightforwardly. We received an answer from United States. There was a misleading information as if we have already sent a reply. That is not the case. This is just the clarification by Minister Lavrov what we mean by indivisibility of security for every country. It's not an answer that we send back replying to US letter. It's being still prepared. So I think that's more or less it.
The Minsk agreement?
What agreement? Minsk agreements. I pray Minsk agreements were implemented. That is what we've been crying for since day one after they were adopted. But unfortunately, Ukrainian authorities now openly claim and state that Minsk agreements are unfulfillable, unimplementable, that they cannot do it, they want to reshape them, they want to pick and choose, to do it piecemeal. That was a package, and that is a package that would lead to the settlement of the crisis. Unless it is implemented as a package, nothing will happen.
James, please.
Ambassador, following up, I'm afraid, on Ukraine and the situation in Eastern Europe and the tensions again. You were very clear in the Security Council yesterday. There was no proof of a threat to Ukraine, no proof that there was any threat to international peace and security. So a simple question to you. Why, then, is there this large build-up of Russian troops, tanks and missiles? And secondly, if I can, as President of the Security Council, do you believe the current tensions might spill over into the work of the Security Council on other issues and to wider global diplomacy?
Second question, I hope they will not. But tensions arise sometimes unexpectedly, and you cannot rule out anything, and not just on the issue that we discussed yesterday, but on other issues as well. But I will try to do my best as president to ensure that the work of the Security Council in February will go smooth without tensions. On the build-up of troops, I'm not the Minister of Defense, and I cannot tell you why there is this movement of troops, but I think I was answering your own question yesterday when I said that in April there was a similar situation when there were maneuvers, exercises, and the troops moved in, then they moved out. Nobody then made any fuss about it. Suddenly, today, that is being portrayed and presented as an imminent danger to Ukraine, although, as I said yesterday, nobody of the Russian officials said anything on that issue. On the contrary, they denied it all the time and continue to deny. And Minister Lavrov said recently that if that depends on Russia, there will be no war. But I said yesterday that, again, both the republics and others are not excluding dangerous provocations that might lead to hostilities. We know that Ukraine is being supplied with a massive build-up weapons, and they are not just defensive weapons. NATO countries are supplying and openly saying that, although that, by the way, contradicts Minsk agreements as well. I just wanted to give you one quote that I read today. You know, we speak when we speak about Ukraine, we say that that we are concerned with many things that are happening in the country. In particular, that Russian language, which is natural language for most of the Ukrainians, is being taken out of the public sphere. They adopted laws which are contrary to their obligations on that matter, etc., etc. I want to quote Secretary of National Security and Defense Council of Ukraine, whose name is Alexei Danilov. He expressed opinion that using Russian language in the world is not safe because of the position of Russia. And that is exactly the reason why I speak to you English.
Michelle.
Thank you, Ambassador, for the briefing. Two questions. First of all, can we expect a visit from Foreign Minister Lavrov during February? Can we expect a visit from Foreign Minister Lavrov during February?
Second question.
Oh, and the second question is on North Korea. They appear to have fired a ballistic missile that could be of medium range. Do you think this is something that should be addressed by the Security Council? And with your meeting next Monday on sanctions and humanitarian situations, what countries specifically are you thinking of? Are you thinking of North Korea? Are Russia and China planning to move forward with your resolution that's been on the table for a couple of years now to try and ease sanctions? If you could elaborate a little more on your thinking for that meeting.
On the first question, Minister Lavrov will not come. Due to his schedule, he will not be able to arrive, but we will dutifully implement all the instructions that he will send us here in February. On North Korea, we repeatedly and continuously call for the resumption of a dialogue to ease tensions on the Korean Peninsula and around it. Nobody is welcoming, of course, moves that compromise this coming back to negotiations. Negotiation has been stalled long time. Yes, our resolution. Humanitarian resolution is on the table. We discussed it with our colleagues in the Council. Some of them consider that it is not yet timely, although you are right, North Korea is one on the list, which is obviously subject to discuss at our meeting on the 7th of February, but not alone, because the sanction list of countries that are under sanctions whose population is suffering because of those sanctions which sometimes are over-implemented is longer than North Korea.
Sorry, just a follow-up. So what other countries are you spring to mind? Who will you particularly talk about during this meeting?
I will not betray exactly who, but you will know.
Abdelhamid.
Thank you, Mr. Ambassador. Abdelhamid Sayama from the Arabic daily Al-Quds Al-Arabi. You know, Mr. Ambassador, many peoples around the world sometimes appreciate when Russia stands for the U.S. hegemony, and among them, the Arab people. But only in two cases, they put so much blame on Russia. when it comes to Israeli violations of the airspace and sovereignty of Syria, day in, day out, and when it comes to Israeli apartheid against the Palestinians. So can't Russia take a stronger stand in these two issues? Thank you.
If you recall our statements when we speak on the Middle East, we never miss an opportunity to note that Israeli violations of the Syrian airspace or whatever airspace are inadmissible. That is, we say it in every statement that we speak on the Middle East. When it comes to the rights of the Palestinians, despite that we are having good relations with Israel, but we are very straightforward with them on that issue. We not only we, but most of the international community have the same position on that the situation with the Palestinians in the occupied territory is inadmissible. That should be resolved. That should be resolved within the settlement, which, let's be frank, not on the horizon at the moment. We are very strongly advocating the resumption of the quartet. We hope, fingers crossed, a quartet on the level of advisors, of senior officials has been held. We proposed a quartet at the level of ministers. We hope that Tor Venesland works on that hard, and we hope that when we discuss that on the 23rd of February, we might hear some good news about it.
Okay, Pamela.
Thank you, Ambassador. Thank you, Tatiana. It's Pamela Falk from CBS News. Again, on Ukraine, the first question is, what role, if any, do you see the UN having if there's a resolution, a diplomatic resolution to the crisis? The UN played a role after the Minsk agreement, and in 2015 passed a resolution to implement Minsk, also UN missions. What role do you see if there is a resolution? And the second is just a clarification of your clarification. You said just now that Moscow your government did not respond to the U.S. proposal. They just sent a clarification, and the proposal is coming. Is that what I heard? Thank you.
One clarification. What resolution and of what crisis you mean? If you mean resolution of the domestic Ukrainian crisis with Donbass, that is one thing. If you're talking about the crisis that artificially is being created today, with accusations of Russia that it created crisis and it should de-escalate.
Well, I was talking about 2205, which was
2202. 2202.
Yes, sorry.
2202 is a roadmap to resolve the
Right.
crisis.
And is there anything like that could come out of this crisis? That's really what I'm asking.
Sorry?
Is there anything like that could come out of this crisis?
Well, that's our hope. We have two formats where this resolution is being implemented. UN is doing its humanitarian and development work both in Ukraine and in Donbass as well. But when it comes to political and technical formats, there are two formats, as you know. This is Normandy, Normandy 4, and this is the Minsk group, where they discuss all the technical issues. Unfortunately, the last summit of Normandy 4 that took place in 2019 in Paris, and where agreements have been reached, these agreements were not implemented. Now, Ukrainian authorities and President Zelensky insists on having another summit. Our position is that before the summit of 2019 decisions are implemented, there is no point to meet again. When it comes to Minsk, which is now virtual, as you know, I read a lot of reports on the meetings. There are, I think, 3 subgroups there: political, economic, and humanitarian. Not much of the public knows the details of what is happening there. I do because I read reports. Unfortunately, our Ukrainian friends are sabotaging most of the things that are to be implemented within these 3 tracks under various pretexts. So nothing is moving. So, as I said, first of all, everybody says, including my colleagues in the Security Council, there is no military solution because military solution is deadly. There is a political solution, and the political solution is framed within Minsk agreements that should be implemented. But how can we implement Minsk agreements if one party, which is a direct part of that Minsk agreements, refuses to implement them? Not just technically, but politically. They said at the highest levels that Minsk agreements are unimplementable, that they can choose certain elements out of it, but they cannot implement it in full. President Zelensky said himself that he understands that Minsk agreements cannot be implemented, but we should still stick to them because of that Russia is being sanctioned. So, what can you add to it?
All right, and on the second question about the response?
Oh, the response, you are right. There is no response on the American response. It's being now coordinated between relevant ministries. It will come, of course. But the letter that was sent to U.S. and other NATO members was clarification of our understanding of European security, how we see it.
All right, thank you.
Okay, the next goes to RT.
Yes, I'm Caleb Maupin with RT. Your U.S. counterpart has said that Washington is open to dialogue on Ukraine as well as in general. Yet at the same time, we're seeing U.S. planes landing in Ukraine, unloading military support, and 40 planes will be landing, unloading military support in Ukraine. Furthermore, we see the sudden move from the U.S. State Department telling diplomatic families in Belarus to evacuate. How do these moves from the United States correlate with this offer for dialogue?
It seems to me it was near a rhetoric question. It doesn't correlate, indeed. And we said yesterday at a meeting that was called by the U.S. That putting these things in the framework that they put yesterday is like calling for a war. It was indeed a provocation. It was. You might have mentioned that the Ukrainian ambassador spoke very moderately on that issue. President Zelensky is calling to stop panicking on that thing. Other Ukrainian officials are saying that they don't see imminent threat which is coming from Russia. I don't know why U.S. is escalating tensions and at the same time accusing Russia of escalating tensions. We never said anything on that. All is that this all is linked to the presence of Russian troops at the Russian-Ukrainian border. That is not true. Russian troops are not at the Russian-Ukrainian border. They are where they normally stay, whether they more than normal or less than normal, or as they are there all the time. I have no idea. I don't know where these figures came from. 100,000, 120,000. Ukrainians are saying 136,000. We never announced how many troops are there, and I don't know who was counting them. So, I mean, somebody was saying Operation False Flag, but I think that they chose the wrong address. And you rightly said that they build up Ukraine massively with armaments, which also not only looks provocative but dangerous as well. They were saying about evacuating their personnel, which is also also provocative, in fact. And again, even President Zelensky was saying that it was unnecessary, and that was a thing that only raises tensions.
Okay, let's take a couple of questions from the chat. Ali Barada, please.
Thank you, Ambassador, for doing this. I have just a quick follow-up. You say the number, you just said the number 100,000 or whatsoever is in the US, or you don't know where they get it from. Can you tell us what is the number of Russian troops on the border? And my other question, or my real question is, while you have a lot of differences between Russia and the US and the West on Ukraine, it seems that there are some agreement on how to deal with the issue of Iran nuclear agreement, on the step-by-step approach by Mr. Pedersen in Syria. Can you shed some lights on the agreements on those issues beside that number issue? Thank you so much for that.
Which agreements?
Well, it seems that you are working together on the mutual compliance by the US and Iran regarding the JCPOA. And Mr. Pedersen mentioned that Russia and the US have some kind of an agreement to the step-by-step approach regarding how to solve the crisis in Syria.
We would like to have cooperation with the US on a much wider range of things. But it was not our choice to narrow this cooperation to only those areas where we either have a joint interest or US has an interest of its own. After the summit of President Biden with President Putin in Geneva, there was an agreement to try to resolve those areas that became practically non-existent in our cooperation. And we resumed dialogue on strategic stability, which moves meaningfully in the sense that there is a practical conversation between people who understand the issues that they are discussing. We started dialogue on cybersecurity, which was, as you know, a tug of war between US and Russia for a long time. But we ourselves, even during Trump administration, we were proposing to start that dialogue, to lay facts on the table and to try to solve our differences and to understand each other. This dialogue started under current administration. It also develops, and that's a good thing. There are results that have been already achieved in that area. We also have concerns on cybersecurity and threats coming from other countries, including US, by the way, and that was openly said when that issue was discussed. So we have dialogue on that issue. We have other dialogues, like Iran, you said. We are both interested in returning to JCPOA and to full implementation of obligations that members of the JCPOA undertook upon themselves. As far as again, today it's not our piece of cake, but as far as I know, negotiations in Vienna are moving, and we can with certain caution expect that the agreement will be reached. We had and continue to have a dialogue on Afghanistan. You know that we have the extended troika, which consists of Russia, US, China, and Pakistan, which is a very important instrument in dealing with issues relating to Afghanistan. Ukraine. I mean, we could have a separate press conference on Ukraine because it's a vast topic. Why we cannot agree on Ukraine. Because Ukraine became a geopolitical card, in fact, in our relations both with the US and some Western countries. And perhaps US is not, we have a feeling that US is not interested in resolving that crisis. Because as you mentioned yesterday when I spoke in the council, when Linda Thomas-Greenfield was delivering her statement, she was not only talking about the current crisis between Russia and Ukraine, which is in fact non-existent, besides all the problems that we experience. But I mean the crisis in what she tried to present. But she didn't mention a single word about Minsk agreement, a single word in her statement, which is telling, in fact. If you want to resolve the crisis in Ukraine, you have to genuinely engage in encouraging and even making Ukraine to implement agreements that they have signed by. So that's a vast topic. Ukraine, unfortunately, became an issue that overshadowed everything else that is between us. And you know that U.S. is perhaps more Catholic on it than Ukrainians themselves, than the Pope. I paraphrase, of course. How many troops are on the border, or not on the border, but where they are stationed now? I have no idea. I don't know where this figure came from, which I cited, but it is not my citation. Nobody knows how many troops, but we are presented with these figures as a fait accompli. We know exactly how many American troops are outside US. That's around 175,000. Besides the bases, besides nuclear weapons, besides other NATO countries which are near Russian borders, which is a concern to us as well. So that is how it is.
Ambassador, are you going to ask your defense ministry how many troops are on the border? Are you planning to ask your defense ministry how many?
I'm not planning to ask my defense ministry. Let my defense ministry speaks for itself.
So you don't want to know how many troops?
Ask my defense ministry, Michelle, if you want yourself, but I don't know why I should be asking my defense ministry. They have their own spokesperson, press secretaries, etc., and they can answer that question if somebody asks them.
Okay, we take one more from the chat, and then we're back to the room. Iftikhar, please.
Thank you. This is Iftikhar Ali from Associated Press of Pakistan. A question other than Ukraine. Mr. Ambassador, despite calls by many countries, including Russia, there has been no progress on unfreezing the Afghan assets to enable the authorities in Kabul to deal with the economic crisis, which is deepening to a dangerous level. As a president of the Security Council, any thoughts on this?
Frankly, I didn't hear most of the question. You're talking about Afghanistan. What?
Afghanistan.
Afghan assets. Afghan assets.
Yes, sir.
Okay. Well, that's a relevant question, of course, and we've been advocating returning Afghan assets to Afghanistan because this humanitarian assistance that goes to the country will not solve the problem and will not save Afghani people. Winter is approaching, situation is dire. There are issues with the Afghan assets, as you know. They are blocked by the decisions by U.S. courts, and our U.S. colleagues are saying that they simply legally cannot withdraw those assets and transfer them to Afghanistan. But of course, whatever the answer and whatever courts decided, that doesn't solve the puzzle, and that doesn't help Afghanistan. It's our common priority to maintain stability in Afghanistan. We are urging Taliban to implement what they said in the beginning. We want an inclusive ethnic confessional government. We want stability in the country. We want fight with terrorism. We want fighting drug trafficking. Of course, we all want maintaining and observing human rights in Afghanistan, including for women and girls. We hope that resolution 2615 of the Security Council that was adopted in December last year would permit not only to the UN but to the countries that are willing to assist Afghanistan to build up their humanitarian assistance so that Afghanistan can at least survive the winter. But the issue of unfreezing the Afghanistan assets is a very acute one. I fully agree with you.
Okay, back to the room. Next, Ibtisam.
Hi, my name is Ibtisam Azim from Al Arabi Al Jadid newspaper. I have first follow-up on Ukraine. You cited the...
Perhaps not enough of Ukraine?
I know,
what do you think?
I know. Just a quick follow-up. You cited the Ukrainian president and the ambassador, but as a matter of fact, the Ukrainian ambassador yesterday in the Security Council, but also after, during the stakeout he held, said that his country support holding the Security Council meeting and calling for it by the US. So your comment quickly on that. And my question is actually on Libya and the fact that the Security Council had 3 times within 5 months rollover. What's standing? Could you shed more light, tell us more about your country's position? And did you get any suggestions from the SG about somebody after the resignation of Mr. Kubish? Thank you.
Of course, the Ukrainian ambassador supported the meeting that US called because it fully reflects the narrative that they themselves, Ukrainians, Ukrainian authorities are maintaining on that issue. No surprises here. I hope he will also support our meeting on the 17th of December on the implementation, on the implementation of Minsk agreements. Of course, I'm sure that he would like to come and make a statement, and he would be most welcome to do that. On Libya, indeed, on yesterday, in fact, we adopted a resolution to extend the mandate of UNSMIL for 3 months. The reason for us is very simple. We would like to the Secretary General, and there is a provision in that resolution which refers back to the previous resolution, that the Secretary General should appoint the new SRSG on Libya without delay. And that is the time frame is more or less the end of April, when the contract of Stephanie Williams expires. By that time, we expect that we have the name which will have been agreed by the Security Council, and we will have the new SRSG starting May, which will be good. They will have the full-fledged mission. It will be based in Tripoli. It will engage in further political process, in forthcoming elections, which are also have to happen without delay. But that is not for the SRSG to decide. That is for the Libyans to decide. His or her job would be to make them agree on the dates and on the format. We believe that this election should be inclusive. Everybody should be given an opportunity to participate. And then we hope that the political process and the settlement will move forward.
Okay, I think we should be taking the last couple of questions, right? Yes, sir, please. Yes.
Hi. Wow. This is Deji from China Central Television. I just had a broad question because yesterday during your remarks you mentioned about megaphone diplomacy. It seems like it's not only about Ukraine, this issue. There are many issues like Syria. Everybody's talking about different, sides and installment. What do you really think of the megaphone diplomacy? And as the president this year of the Security Council, what would you do to really deal with issues rather than use megaphones? Thank you.
Yes, yesterday was a perfect example of this so-called megaphone diplomacy that was not about resolving the issue, but to attract attention and to present a version which has nothing to do with reality, but that was also an issue of domestic politics, as you understand, because that was prepared a long time before the meeting started. We protested and took it for the procedural voting, not because we were afraid to discuss the issue, but because we thought that it was not about the real issues, but the issues that were fake and that were invented. On the megaphone diplomacy, if I hear something megaphone during my presidency, I will not be able to stop it, to stop the speaker who would use a megaphone diplomacy. I hope that we would be able to avoid it in February and later on. We've been saying many times that Security Council members of the Security Council should avoid, naming and shaming, that we should be more engaged in pragmatic things and pragmatic solutions. And in fact, I was saying that many times over the years, that Security Council reaches agreements on most of the issues it discusses. But you are asking only about the issues which are a tug of war or which are on the radar, etc. I understand you are media, you are interested in hot facts, etc. But Security Council operates. But sometimes what it makes and what it does is left behind the scenes and is not very much on the front pages.
Okay, let's have Betül and then the final one from Edith. Okay.
Thank you, Ambassador. Here, Betül, Turkish News Agency, Anadolu. 2 questions. A quick follow-up on Ukraine. The US and the EU are also talking about sanctions if they're in case of an Russian aggression on Ukraine. If there were any sanctions, how would Russia respond? And my second question will be on Syria. Do you expect the Syrian Constitutional Committee to meet in Geneva this month? Thanks.
On sanctions, we've been sanctioned so many times that we lost count, point 1. Point 2, they threaten us with so-called, who do they call them, horrific or health sanctions, I forgot. And the most ironic thing about it is that they now are talking about sanctions before anything happens, preventive sanctions. So, you saw yesterday, I saw Senator Menendez discussing it somewhere in the Senate, that Russia should be punished because it has bad intentions. Whatever happens, whether it happens, whether it doesn't happen, it should not happen, in fact. Ukrainians are, of course, I saw some statements of their officials are very much welcoming that. You know, the funny thing is, as we've been saying a long time, including Minister Lavrov, that was the time of Poroshenko still, but the situation didn't change. The paradox is that Ukraine is not implementing Minsk agreements, but Russia is being punished for it. We've been with this for a long time already. We learned to live with that. You know, will not harm Russia only if that is implemented. I hope that they will have enough reason not to go forward with it. But that will backfire, of course, and of course we will respond. How we will respond, I will not betray at the moment. On the Constitutional Committee, we will hear from Geir Peterson on 25th of January, when the meeting is being planned. I don't think this month it will happen. Sorry, this month I was thinking January. He will inform us how the preparation for the next round of the Constitutional Committee is going.
Okay, Edith.
Thank you very much, Mr. Ambassador. Two quick follow-ups and then a question. First, you said that the ministries are preparing a response to the U.S. letter. How soon will that be expected? And in your two signature events, are you expecting any outcome documents? And my question is about Myanmar. Today is the first anniversary of the Myanmar coup. There have been several UN officials who've lamented that the UN Security Council has taken no action to address this. As I'm sure you've read, there were protests and strikes today, and some officials have said that the conflict is quickly sliding into civil war. I wonder if you could address Russia's view on that issue.
I do not, maybe first two questions, quick responses. Yes, the response to the U.S. response has not been yet finalized. Press Secretary of the President, as well as Minister Lavrov, who today had a telephone conversation with Secretary of State, said that it is in the pipeline. It will come, of course. Of course, it will come. Signature events, no outcome. On Myanmar, I cannot tell you whether it's sliding down to a civil war or not. Of course, we are all looking to resolving that thing peacefully, but that's only the Myanmar people can do as anywhere else. We count on the diplomatic efforts which the current ASEAN chair is doing. You know that we have a new special envoy of the Secretary General who started to engage on Myanmar. And I don't know whether I would betray a secret to you or not, but Security Council is working on a product on Myanmar as we speak. Look, I will tell you one thing, and it will become another, and I don't want to be a liar. Sorry?
Starting on a resolution?
Look, let's wait. Don't rush things.
Thank you.
Wait there. Ну, наверное, нечестно. Полная, да.
Да. Вопрос про Минские соглашения все-таки спрошу. Скажите, пожалуйста, вот всем уже очевидно, и в ООН много раз говорили, что Минские соглашения – это единственный дипломатический способ решения конфликта в Донбассе. Украинские высокопоставленные официальные лица уже в открытую говорят, что Украина не будет их соблюдать. В то же время западные страны накачивают Украину оружием. В этом контексте что собираетесь обсуждать 17 февраля? И понятно, что мегафонная дипломатия не наш метод, но какой смысл вот в прежнем формате все это продолжать, если мы уже все привыкли, что Минские соглашения – это то, что не выполняется? Спасибо.
Мне по-русски, наверное, отвечать, Георгий, да? Sorry, that was about the Minsk agreements. I will answer in Russian with your permission. Although I already cited the Ukrainian Secretary of the National Security Council. Во-первых, 7-я годовщина. Мы каждый год эту тему в Совете Безопасности поднимаем, чтобы привлечь внимание не только Совета Безопасности, но и мирового сообщества к тому, что Украина давно, последовательно сначала саботировала Минские соглашения, а сейчас просто прямым текстом отказывается от них. То есть, я, как и сказал, мы будем обсуждать не выполнение Минских соглашений, а невыполнение Минских соглашений. Мы неоднократно, как вы помните, причем Россию, как вы знаете, так сказать, пытаются выставить стороной Минских соглашений и постоянно требовать от нее выполнить Минские соглашения. Сколько раз мы не говорили и не просили наших коллег прочитать сами Минские соглашения и пакет мер в приложении к ним, где нет ни одного слова России. Все обязательства, которые там изложены, они касаются Киева и Донбасса. Никто ничего не хочет слушать. Но повторение мать учения, я думаю, что надо вновь привлечь внимание к этому вопросу и вновь попытаться побудить наших партнеров, побудить их киевских подопечных вернуться к этому, потому что без этого другого пути решения конфликта нет. Это понятно совершенно. Потому что чем больше проходит времени, тем больше, к сожалению, Донбасс отдаляется от Киева.
Вы говорили здесь сами тоже, что Украина, ну, по сути, следует в формате внешней политики США, и, может быть, не с украинцами нужно уже говорить про Минские соглашения, а с теми, кто действительно что-то решает.
Ну, вот мы говорим и побуждаем, так сказать, наших американских коллег повлиять на своих украинских, ну, скажу мягко, подопечных. Но понимание американской стороной Минских соглашений и ситуации вокруг Украины, оно, наверное, еще, к сожалению, меньше и более искаженное, чем понимание наших коллег по нормандскому формату. Я думаю, perhaps that's enough. What do you think? Thank you very much, my dear friends.
Thank you very much.
I'll be seeing you often during this month. I'll have no other choice, unfortunately. Fortunately, I have no other choice. I will have to attend to you very often.
Please stop and talk to us.
I will.